Have you ever heard that men have one less rib than women because God took one of Adam's to create Eve? It's a classic story, but let's get this out of the way first. It's not true. Men and women have the same number of ribs. But that little myth points to a much bigger question. Have we really understood the Adam's rib story the way it was meant to be understood? Because when you dig into the original Hebrew, what you find is deeper, richer, and honestly, pretty shocking in the best way possible. Let's walk through it. First, let's recap the story we think we know. In Genesis chapter 2, God forms the first human, Adam, and places him in the Garden of Eden. Adam names the animals, but something's missing. The text says, "But for Adam, no suitable helper was found. So God says, 'It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him.' He then puts Adam into a deep sleep, takes one of his ribs, and builds a woman from it. Adam wakes up, sees her, and says, 'This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh.'" The story concludes that this is why a man and woman unite and become one flesh. That's the version most of us know. God takes a rib from Adam and makes Eve. But the original Hebrew words tell a very different story. The key word here is tsela. Most English Bibles translate this as rib, which is where the whole idea comes from. But here's the interesting part. If you look at how tsela is used everywhere else in the Old Testament, it almost never means rib. It usually means side, like the side of the Ark of the Covenant, or the side of a building. It's architectural language. It's about sides, halves, or entire sections, not just one single bone. So when the text says God took a tsela from Adam, many Hebrew scholars argue that it's better understood as God taking a side of Adam. Think about that difference. One image is God using divine tweezers to snap off a spare part. The other image is God taking the original human and dividing it into two sides, one becoming man, one becoming woman. It's less spare part, more two halves of a whole. That's a huge shift in perspective. Now, let's rewind to that phrase, suitable helper. In English, helper can sound like assistant or junior partner, but the Hebrew word is ezer. And guess who ezer usually refers to in the Bible? God. For example, "The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid." Ezer isn't a weak word. It means a strong support, a rescuer, someone who comes alongside in power. And the full phrase, ezer, kenegdo, means a counterpart, a partner facing him, someone who corresponds to him. Not identical, not inferior, but a matching, balancing, powerful partner. There's another clue hiding in plain sight. When God makes Adam, the text says, "He formed him like a potter shapes clay." But when God makes the woman, the word used is built. He builds the woman. This is the same word used for building altars, houses, and even the temple. It suggests intentional design, careful craftsmanship, and structure. So, let's put it all together. God takes a tsela aside, not just a rib. He builds the woman with the care of an architect. And she is an ezer, kenegdo, a powerful counterpart, not a sidekick. When Adam wakes up and says, "This is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh," he's not saying, "Hey, that's a little piece of me." He's recognizing her as being of his very essence. Same substance, same value, same worth. So why did rib stick in our translations? Well, partly because a rib is part of your side. So it wasn't a completely random choice for early translators. But rib had an unintended effect. It shrank the image. Instead of seeing woman coming from a whole side of the original human, we started picturing her as being made from a single, leftover bone. And over centuries, that smaller picture has fed into some really unhelpful ideas that woman is a secondary creation, an afterthought, or somehow less than man. But the Hebrew text actually points in the exact opposite direction. From the very beginning, man and woman share the same origin, are made of the same stuff, and are designed as two sides of one humanity, meant to stand side by side, face to face, as partners, not one above the other, not one whole and one spare part, but two halves of a unity. Now, think about how the story ends. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. If the original human was one, and God separated that one into two, then the idea of one flesh in marriage becomes this beautiful, profound reunion. It's like the story is saying that when a man and woman come together in partnership, it's a return to that original unity. This doesn't mean you're incomplete if you're single, but it does mean that the root story of humanity isn't built on hierarchy. It's built on connection. This isn't about throwing away your Bible. It's about reading it more deeply. Looking at the original words doesn't destroy the story. It strengthens it. It reveals a God who cares about relationship, who intentionally designs partnership, and who honors both man and woman from the very start. The God of Genesis 2 doesn't create a master and an assistant. He creates two sides of one humanity, designed to walk together. So, is the word rib totally wrong? Not entirely, but it's narrow. It misses the symbolic depth. Side opens up the meaning. Eve is not formed from Adam's head to rule over him, nor from his feet to be trampled on. She is built from his side close to his heart, equal in dignity. And this matters today. The stories we tell ourselves shape how we see each other. If your story is, woman came from a spare part, you might subconsciously see women as less central or less necessary. But if your story is closer to the original Hebrew, God divided the original human into two equal sides, man and woman, then called them back into unity. You start to see equality in origin and value. You start to see partnership, and that changes everything. How you speak, how you listen, how you treat the people around you. The real shock isn't some conspiracy theory about a mistranslation. The real shock is that the Bible's first story about man and woman gives more honor, more dignity, and more equality to both than many of us were ever told. And that's a story worth hearing again. Thanks so much for watching. If this gave you a new perspective, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into stories you thought you knew. See you next time.